So to my guests, thank you so much for coming on the show. How you doing? How you feeling?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing pretty well. A little nervous, but I'm so happy to be here.
Why are you nervous, girl?
I don't know, I'm just like really big on perception. So, it's a flaw.
No, you speaking your truth. So you don't have nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Now, before we begin, I want to say happy birthday to you. I love birthdays, y'all, if
Me
y'all didn't
too.
know. So happy belated birthday.
Thank you so much. I was not expecting that. Thank you.
Right. Now, reflecting on your journey so far, what would you say is the biggest lesson you learned about yourself in life as you turn? You want me to say your age or no?
Yeah, I'm 38.
38. Come on now.
Um, I've learned that the hardest things that we can do is go against what we think to be true. And
That was it right there.
right?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. So I mean, the more I talk about my story, the more that'll show in like why I feel that way turning 38, because I don't know,
Mm.
this to me was a transformative year thus far. And 37 was my best year. So this year I'm like, I gotta top it somehow, which it's only up from here. So I'm just really excited.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, I cover a lot of traumatic stories, unfortunately, because a lot of us can relate to it.
Right.
And, I feel like I have covered every traumatic story that you can think of because for me and my platform, it's important for people to see themselves in, just in everyday life because you be thinking you're the only one that's going through something where there's somebody else that's going through the exact same thing. And when I came across your story, I was just like, wow. Like it's only a couple of stories that really get to me, and this was one of them because, and we'll get into it when the time comes. But I just wow, just wow. So I'm so happy that you are here. I know your story is going to be a blessing. I know a lot of people are going to feel even more stronger, and we will be able to see it through because of you. So thank you for real for being a part of the show.
Oh, you're making me blush.
Now, has your stepfather always been in your life, or did he come into your life at the age of 5?
Um, he was with my mother starting at the age of 2. He
Oh, okay.
age of 5 was whenever we all began to live under the same roof.
Okay. Where was your dad at?
I did not know. There really wasn't much of a relationship that I can remember. He has been the only father type figure that was present to the best of my knowledge.
And you still haven't gotten in contact with your father as of yet?
No, ma'am.
Or do you know who he is?
I know this is crazy.
Oh, wait, I
So
don't if you don't feel comfortable giving too much, then you don't have to.
no, it's completely okay. No. The only contact that I've had with my actual birth father, I know his name because my the brother under me is his junior. So,
Okay.
but I couldn't tell you his last name. I mean, his birth date. I couldn't tell you what he looked like. I physically have not come face to face with this man, and through his own journey, drug use and
Mm,
starting his own life, he made certain decisions, and unfortunately, it was me and my siblings. So.
right. So do
Mhm.
you remember anything about your childhood, like any good before everything started?
Uh, yes. Um, I would say like I've had periods of good that occurred prior to the abuse, and for which is kind of unfortunate because I have memories of abuse before him.
Before your stepfather?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Was
So
somebody in your family?
no. I can remember my mother having me and my siblings. At the time, she just had me and my 2 younger brothers, and we all have the same father. So, um, she didn't really have sustainable housing. She was 19 when she had me. She dropped out of ninth grade. Really wasn't, the most intellectual. based on her schooling. And so I can just remember us being over her friend's house with their kids, and that's when abuse would occur. Just leaving us, and then I can't tell you what it was for. I was so young.
Yeah.
But I know now as an adult, it wasn't to get a job,
Right.
to provide housing for us. So my happy moments in childhood would be basically in Pittsburgh. It's called Jubilee Kitchen, and that's where the homeless go to get food. And the Salvation Army actually had living quarters where people can come and stay. And I remember the building and everything. And I could just remember walking from the Salvation Army to Jubilee Kitchen, and just the route, the environment, seeing the people, the sounds, because we really didn't get to go anywhere unless
right. So you outside engaging with people.
Yeah, seeing what it is. So those were my early introductions of like getting public like help in that aspect, because it's a different type of environment. It's not like going to Denny's. So
right.
So the staff at
Salvation. Pause. Did you used to go to Denny's?
No.
It's funny that you said that, because when I was a kid, I used to love going to Denny's because Denny's has the best Coke fountain drinks. Fountain drinks were, I mean, they still might have the shit not good for you, but I'm talking about the fountain drinks used to be so crisp to the point you had to be like,
right. That's right. Childhood real locked.
Yeah. That sounds like, oh shit, Denny's. But yeah, go ahead.
So like the staff that worked at the Salvation Army, they were very nice and polite. The very few photos that I have as a child is one where we were at the Salvation Army, and I was playing with my younger brother, well, my youngest sibling.
Right.
But yeah.
So it's only 3 of y'all, you and your 2 brothers.
No. Me and my 2 brothers share a father, and then there's my youngest sibling,
which is your stepfather's son.
Yes.
That's right, because you're the only girl.
I am. And
girl,
I'm
I did research on you.
I'm like, like, you don't go, yes, I was. Yeah, that was
right. Another reason why I think your story is so significant, and obviously unfortunately, is because the role that your mom played in it. And I don't want to jump ahead because I have a whole section for her.
Yeah.
And respectfully, but do you think your mom was on drugs, or was she on drugs?
You know what? Out of all my years of living, I got asked that in my early 30s. Somebody asked me, like, so your stepdad was doing drugs. You don't think your mom was doing it? And I couldn't give an answer, because if it's something I'm used to in the environment, I'm not going to be able to tell the difference of what's what, because I didn't know he was on drugs, because I don't know what to look for like that. If there's erratic behavior, that's accustomed to, I can't decipher the difference between it. So I wouldn't put it past her. No, absolutely not. But I don't know.
So how did you first recognize that the behavior your stepfather was abusive? Because you were so young. So what made you feel like this is not right?
What in regards to which part? Because this is all forms of abuse occurring. So I need you to be a tad bit more specific.
Well, I know I'm talking about the sexual abuse, but he was physically abusing you as well?
Oh yeah, me and my siblings grew up in, it was ridiculous. My sexual abuse was, I wouldn't say the least of our worries, but we've all dealt with some form of abuse under that house. I'm just able to tell my portion of what happened.
I'm just curious, have you and your siblings talked about this? I know I'm assuming the youngest sibling, which is your stepfather's son, there's some friction between y'all.
There is now. So the way things work is, whenever I decided I was going to go after him criminally, when I found out I could, first of all, let's get that out there, because I didn't know all these years that I could.
No, we don't get to that part too, because I want to hear your thoughts on some things that's going on right now, but go ahead.
Sure. But I ended up having to tell each of my siblings in different times, and each time it was just different occasions. So the one, I don't care about their names. My brother, I don't care. He had just getting out of prison. And he was trying to get the family back. His thing was like, oh, let's get the family back together. And I'm like, that's not going to work for me. And I had found he was sending my mom photos of my daughter, my kids, and I had to let him know, like, because he didn't know. I was like trying
Oh,
to
okay,
find the
okay.
time because I knew it was something heavy and I was worried about their psyche. And so I told him, lost it. They all had their own individual responses, but what I did gather from talking to each of them individually and one-on-one is that I was able to put pieces in the gaps of their story. Because they weren't sure why certain things were occurring in regards to how I was being treated or the behaviors in the household, because to have a man and a woman fighting over the sexual abuse he's doing to her daughter, that's not going to be a pleasant experience. So she wasn't being mindful of like, oh, the boys might hear us or whatever. It was like whatever the F she felt like talking about, she was going to, it was going to come off.
Right.
So, and then my other brother, I picked him up from prison and told him on a ride back to Pittsburgh. And then my
Oh,
young,
that's that ride. Jeez.
okay. And then my youngest sibling, I actually, had him come to my house and we sat in my driveway and I told him what was going on and my position with his father. And, that conversation was one I will always remember, but it's the actions after that really caused the estrangement between me and him to this day. So.
And why would you always remember that one?
Because out of all of us, based on my abuse and what occurred at 12, we'll talk about it. I was more of a mother figure to him.
Yeah.
Than his older sister at that point, because I was able to see who our mother was and I knew exactly who his father was.
It's like you was protecting him in a sense.
I thought I was, at least. But people make their own decisions.
Were you the only one that was being sexually abused?
By my stepfather, to my acknowledgement, yes. However, in these conversations, I did learn that my brothers have experienced some form of sexual trauma, whether it was a rape inside our house with an unknown assailant, don't know who it was, or if it was with one of the friends that would come over and stay the night. So they have their own stories, and I'm sure there's things I don't even know.
Yeah.
I don't put it past anything at this point. Yeah.
Wow, that is heartbreaking. Because a lot of this shit just be put up on kids, and then that's why we got fucked up ass individuals because of shit that they didn't even ask for.
Nope. Didn't even ask to be here or the responsibility and to be manipulated the way we were as children until today. Honestly, it's scary. And
it's really scary.
It's extremely scary, for sure.
Yeah, like even when you got your kids at school, like kids would do little things like, yeah, right.
Even as early as pre-K, my daughter comes back and she's, talking to me about things, and I'm familiar with some of the little kids in the room and their backgrounds with their parents. So whenever she's coming to me with a little bit more mature information, I'm able to pinpoint, okay, I know exactly where this is coming from and we need to shut it down, because she thinks it's innocent, but it's just like it could be something way worse if not.
Yeah. Were there any warning signs or red flags that you now recognize in hindsight that could have stopped the abuse a little earlier? I mean, it's only so much you could have done because you're a child, but just for anybody else that's going to be listening to this conversation, because I do feel like you said, your daughter coming back as a pre-K and she's saying certain things, it's like, where do you get that from? Like, that's kind of like weird.
Yeah. Well, I would say the signs, looking back now, would in my eyes be considered like grooming. And the grooming I experienced, it kind of enmeshed with his role as my stepfather and me as his only daughter. He used that as his way to get closer to me.
Like you was his princess.
Basically. There's a photo that I use on my when I tell my story, where you'll see me, I'm smiling right next and we're cheesing in the photo booth,
Yeah.
and this is before it started to happen. So the innocence of that relationship was tarnished because, again, he used that as a way to get close to me, being able to be in proximity touch wise. He would reward me for things, give me gifts, and it would be guys under, she's the only girl, she's the, I don't want to repeat my nickname, so never mind. But yeah, so it would be used in that aspect, and the touching would get a little bit more intense. So that brings us to like 5 years old, whenever we are finally alone. Because prior to that, my stepfather, I knew to be in jail, and I can only remember because my mom would be at the payphone getting these calls at specific times in the day. So he didn't actually live with us. And even when we moved into our own place, as many may know, whenever you live in low income housing, they don't expect the man to be present. So he was never technically supposed to be there.
Right.
So, he was able to hide under that as well. So when things crossed the line, where he, made his move, was when we finally got our own place to live. And me and my two younger siblings were on a queen size mattress. So we're, spread out. We're young, we're small. And my baby brother at the time was in the bed with my mom, and my stepfather had come from where they were to this main area in the living room. And I can remember the light coming on, and I can remember the light coming off, and I could hear his footsteps, but then they stop at me. So he proceeds to reach under the cover and into my clothing. And that's where I started to see that this isn't okay, because I've never been touched like this by him, and it's making me uncomfortable.
Especially by a man.
Big hands. You know what I'm saying? 5. My daughter's about to be 5. I look at her every day and it's like a trigger. Big hands. And starting to grab on me to where I do defend myself. And he got so startled by my position of like, no, I don't want that he scattered off, to the room. So I, at that time, you don't think it's going to keep happening, right? But
yeah.
I knew from that moment that he wasn't a safe person at all.
And I feel like some other tactics that he would use was like when he'll put you on punishment a lot.
Oh, that's later. That's after it's full-blown sexual abuse, and he's like getting creative with how to keep me close in vicinity to him so he can get to me. Because I did tell my mom what he was doing.
Did you tell your mom about it the first time?
I can't say it was the first time. But, and this is how I want to point out how our brains as childhood trauma survivors, how we can reimagine history in order to protect people. All my life that I can remember, I swear to you, I thought I told my mom at 10 years old. It wasn't until she confessed, gave statement, whatever, later on into the investigation, that I found out I was 5, and I was crushed. I was crushed to learn that about myself. So she knew on set, whether it was 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, it went on for 7 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
When I was listening to your story, I'm like, yo, your mom was looking at you like you was the other woman.
100%. Like, and it's
looking at her child, a kid at that.
It's sad. It's so sad. And as a kid, I'm just like, why is she mad at me? First of all, like, you're angry at me. Right. I'm trying to exist. And it's like, I must have already had distrust within me, because if I'd already told you and nothing happened, because I can remember him telling her, what would I want to do with her? What would I want to do with that little girl? Like, come on. Like, and I'm going to just say their names because it doesn't matter. It's true. He'll say, come on. Like, what do you mean? I don't want her. Like, that's nasty. Like, how could you look at me like that? Wow. And he did exactly what he told me he was going to do when I told him I was going to tell. And it worked out exactly how he told me it was going to work out.
And did you believe him when he told you?
No, I thought my mom was going to be my mother.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's your mom's background? Do you know anything about what happened to her? Because
Yes,
as a
I've got this information. Yeah.
yeah, because you respectfully, but as a woman giving birth to a child, like you're gonna protect your babies. Like it got to come to a point where you're gonna pick your children over everything. So for her to allow this and like, I think you even said in one of your stories that you used to hear her and him arguing, and you would hear her say, "Why her? Why not me?" So for her to even vocalize that lets me know like something fucked up must have really happened to her that broke her.
Yeah, it's generational for sure.
Yeah.
Her her story, her abuse came from my uncle and her mother's brother. So my grandmother's, I don't really have a tie to like family, so I'm not good with the lineage talk, y'all.
Yeah.
So her uncle abused her, and instead of them protecting her, they protected him. Because I talked to his daughter later on, who let me know like that's what he did. Like he was perverse, and he was protected by the family. And yeah, so with a stunted education, her own trauma that she's dealing with, she had to survive however she needed to, which I can relate to a certain extent. But where we cross the line and where things get a little off for me is where she has children and doesn't mother them.
Yeah. Oh man, this reminds me of two stories. I did a story about this lady, her and her mom are sisters. So her mom's right. My guest just took a deep breath and said that. So my guest grandfather is also her father. And she
Right.
was saying how the family pretty much was like protecting the men because incest is like really common within their family. And I was just like, wow, like, and then the second story is about when you said that your mom, like her growth kind of like got stunted. I did it the season premiere. My father's mistress killed my mother. And when this lady, my guest, when she was telling her story, you can hear it like she couldn't vocalize it. Like it's like she was like trying to fight the words to come out. And like for some reason it just wouldn't come out. Like, and that was a very hard episode because when you can hear and physically see trauma, that's a lot.
It is. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot, man. It's a lot. It's really heartbreaking because I mean I'm pretty sure this goes on in a lot of communities, but obviously it hits different when it's somebody that look like you.
Absolutely, especially when you know the numbers of what's not reported and
Talk
how
about
we're
it.
viewed in society. Like they, no one really cares. And for it to be in the 90s,
Yeah.
they're not checking for poor Black girls getting raped and molested. They're not. And then let's take it back. Let's take accountability. They wasn't reporting it either, clearly.
Yeah.
They weren't reporting it because they didn't want the man in their business based on the relationships African Americans and police have. Like that was done from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, it's don't get me started because I be going because I get so emotional because like this shit is so deep. Like the way that they have came at Black families
Yes.
and the way you can see how Black families were affected by a lot of things that this society have put on us it'll make you so angry.
Very much so. Very much so. Because again, it's nothing we as people have asked for. It's just like for whatever reason, because there's no reason. Like, let's be real.
Yeah.
That they do this stuff. So to know that there's already things in place to keep you in a certain place on a totem pole, low, and to try to fight in that just within your own community as well. It's just like the odds are stacked against you.
Oh yeah, the goalposts gonna always keep moving, baby. That's why I said cheat. Okay.
Girl, they got.
Now, one of the things I love about your story is how you were very honest. And I don't think that a lot of people talk about this part because it is very confusing. But you mentioned that there were times when you felt confused because even though you did not want this, your body reacted, which is normal, and you had multiple orgasms. Why did you feel like that was necessary for you to share that?
Because I dealt with the shame of it. And in me saying it out loud and knowing I had a platform and definitely knowing I wasn't the only one, it just took me to take that leap. Because a lot of things that I do discuss, like it's something that I may have discussed in therapy, and I want to get it off of me. And not in the sense of like trauma dumping, but being like, I just overcame this. How can I help the next person do the same without them having to get extensive therapy? Or maybe this will unlock something within their healing. So yeah, like, because there's so much attached to your innocence and the experiences that you get to have as a young lady, and to be introduced to sex by a father figure, the person you see every day, the father to your brother, you know, and to have this man come in your room and take advantage of that innocence, and then to expose you to parts of your own self that you never even knew existed.
Yeah.
It's very confusing, and that follows you when it's not addressed, because out of all my life, like I've attached my sexual like experiences to that encounter because that's what I have that point of reference to.
Was he your first?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, where my first orgasm, yes. But when it comes down to the actual experience, I was able to keep that for in my, later on in life when I became a teenager on my own accord. I was able to experience that. But when it comes to law, and I learned that throughout my process, penetration does not equate to rape. It's a form of rape, but it's not the only definition of what rape is.
Right.
So with what he had done to me, it was considered, well, it is rape. So
yeah, no, it's definitely rape. Now tell us about the day after your 6th grade graduation.
So basically I was excited, I'm 12. And that's all, and this is crazy how I remember it, because it's something is always attached to something that is very important to me. And for my 6th grade graduation, like finger waves was in. I got my finger waves done. I was
not
cute.
the finger waves, anyway, baby.
I did. Like I was like, oh, look at me. So we didn't have to go to school. I'm about to call. We didn't have to go to school.
Why you didn't go to school?
Because we graduated. We was done. They was
okay.
Y'all done. Y'all, what y'all coming to school for? Y'all promoted.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to big kid school next year. So it was just a day. But I got to stay home because, again, I'm the oldest. So I'm there. And my stepfather was there as well. And what happened was I get up, and usual day for me, I go to the restroom, and as I'm trying to go to the bathroom, as soon as the pee left my body, it immediately gave me the most intense burning sensation. Obviously, well, I can't say obviously, that I had ever experienced up to that point.
You never experienced it, right?
I've never had any issues. Now, I may have gotten in an accident where like I've hurt myself down there, but it was definitely,
or maybe put too much soap down there.
Right. So it's just like, it was just excruciating. So much so where I stopped pissing in my tracks. Okay. You know, it's hard that first morning. So it was hard to do, but I had to, but then I had to get it out. So I went through my ordeal and I'm hysterical. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. And I'm crying out. And my stepfather hears me. And I tell him what's going on. And he tells me, get dressed. We're leaving. And he takes me to the inner city hospital.
Mm.
And I get there. They start to ask me questions. Mind you, I'm 12. So it really just be blowing me when I hear back my own story to myself to be like, where are people's minds? But I get there and there's no adult with me. My stepfather takes me and leaves me.
Well, he just dropped you off?
He got me in there and he left. He got up out of there. So it was just me. It was me with these nurses in the back, and I've never had a gynecologist exam, so I don't know what's going on. They're probing me down there. They're, a rape kit, and they're asking me so many questions, like what's going on? Like, how did this happen to you? Like, what's wrong?
That's how you know times is different. Because the fact that they was doing all this and you had no parent with you, no grown person, no nothing, times were different back in the day.
They were like, take this girl to the back. So I guess it was the extent of my injury to where they everything was like, this little girl shouldn't even be having this type of issue down there, because it was
she's 12
with ulcers pulsating in her vaginal area. This is unacceptable and we need to figure this out. Like, it was bad. I had a flare up, my first flare up ever. So I could hear my mom in the hallway screaming. And these are white people. I'm trained, you know what I mean, to not trust them. And it took for them, to keep talking to me, for me to tell them what was going on, and that my stepfather had been, was the person who was touching me inappropriately. And then things start just going from there.
Now, we don't have to talk about this if you're not comfortable, but I feel like this part is very important because, there's a lot of stigma when it comes to STDs. So you were diagnosed with herpes.
Yes, herpes simplex 2. Yes, at 12.
That is fucking crazy.
Very much so.
So have you encountered any like lasting effects or complications from having this? Because I can only imagine how this, like, it really fucks with you, not even in this situation, but just like overall, like you trying to date or like just everyday life.
Yeah.
And then you got to even explain that to people, and then you got to go into the backstory. Like, that's a lot for you.
Very much so. And again, this happened at 12, so I'm having to take these medications to the nurse, because you couldn't just bring medicine to school. So if I was having a flare up, I had to bring it. 𝐬𝐫𝐽 had to bring the cream to school. So yes, long lasting effects. Of course, it affected my self-esteem. Anytime I had a flare up, it was a reminder of what happened to me and how it happened to me and who it was by, and even also how they got it, because with my mother, dealing with the news of everything, and she had her own breakdown and experience, so she was never there for me in this ordeal. It was more so about her, what she lost, and she made it a point to let me know that he had received the disease from a prostitute.
Well, thanks, Mom.
Like,
that makes me feel even better. Right.
I'm a kid, so you want me to do what? You know what I mean? So
did she why she up here telling people business?
I would assume that she was okay with getting it at this point. So yeah, because they were trying for kids and stuff. So yeah. But that's a whole nother story. Her tubes was tied. It was never happening. But anyway, delusional. So yeah, everlasting effects on me. Any person that I was like sexual with, most likely relationship. if it was ever going to take it beyond a certain level. And I communicated it with my partner. So I made sure early on, learning about my disease, I'm big on education. So and
Yeah.
knowledge. So
But
I
that's how you
delved in.
protect yourself though.
Absolutely. That's the only thing I had control over, was to learn about it. So with that, I was able to gain understanding of what my body was dealing with. On the knowledge aspect, as far as the emotional and the traumatic aspect of things, that's something that I continuously would deal with. And till this day, I deal with, like, even though I've gotten it under control to where I don't really have outbreaks, I know when my body's reacting a certain way to
Mm-hmm.
stress.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and how my immune system acts sometimes. It's just very disheartening. And even having my children, vaginal births, I've had 4 of them. And each time I put my children at risk of obtaining it, through the vaginal canal. And that was just something that was a big fear for me, being a mother, especially being a mother so young.
Yeah. Yo, God bless you, man. We're gonna stay in contact because you've been through a lot, and I appreciate you just being honest and transparent, because I can only imagine the things that you go through that nobody knows about. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that's important that you did, because I feel like a lot of people, when it comes to STDs, have this stigma, and when you tell people, they automatically assume that you a hoe, not even knowing that, yo, this was put on me. I didn't even know what the hell this shit was. You know what I'm saying? So I really appreciate you being honest about that.
Oh yeah, no problem. And like, even when I am encountered with me being honest about it, um, I've I can't say no one's ever turned me down, but
Well, listen, listen, you stay with a nigga now, okay?
you know what I'm saying? That ain't stop it. But
Listen, that thing don't
I
stop
respect,
nothing now.
don't let them fool you. You don't. But I respect people's decisions either way. I don't take it
Yeah,
personally. Um,
but you're
and I
giving
just
people that choice.
absolutely, I would never want someone to experience what I experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. So when the nurses became aware, what happened next? Because your mom was present. Not you rolling your eyes. Because when did the police get
Because it,
involved? Did they ever get called to the hospital or?
and this is why I roll my eyes. I roll my eyes because a lot of this information that I'm able to repeat, I've experienced it, but then the gaps in between for me were filled in by my own mother. And then to see the role that she played in all of this, it really threw me by surprise. Now, mind you, this is new. This is 4 years that I've been going through this and delving it up and really facing it. So yes, police were involved. My mother spoke to 2 officers. I remember that. um I had to go see a therapist. I remember meeting with her one time. And then also I had a case with CYF or CPS, and I remember talking to the caseworker. I remember what he looked like, his name, everything. So we went through the due process, you would assume. And that's why for so long, what I had nothing to go off of, in a sense of him still being around in the house, and this dynamic that was created between the both of them,
Right.
following coming out. Yeah.
So if they had the evidence, you in the hospital because obviously they did a rape kit and it's shown that something happened to you. Why wasn't nothing done?
And that's where I kind of go blank, because that was the adult's responsibility at that point, to take it and do what they needed to do. My mother, she should have prosecuted this to the furthest extent of the law. For whatever reason and however this all occurred, I cannot tell you how I slipped through the cracks. I cannot tell
Because
you
it's
how
in
this
black and
happened.
white. Like the facts is there.
Right. And it would be some of those same facts that worked for me in my case against him, later
Right.
on in life.
So did you ever confront your mom about her reason to prioritize your stepfather over you? Like, did y'all ever have a conversation? Because I know it was a point in time when he moved out or he wasn't living with y'all. And she wanted to talk to you about how you was feeling about him.
Yeah. So I couldn't really tell you how long it was. I want to say it wasn't that far of a time from whenever it came out to whenever this walk occurred.
Right.
I ended up being at my grandmother, her mother's house for the summer. So I wasn't in the house. Supposedly he wasn't in the house, and that was to be that. So when I returned into the home, yes, she wanted to have a conversation with me. And that conversation, because we were walking somewhere, she took me on a walk with his son. And where we lived, kids walked all the time. So I knew everywhere from anywhere. So I knew where I was at. I just didn't know where we were going.
Right.
And during this walk, she talks to me about my stepfather and how I feel about him and about everything that happened. And, she really hadn't talked to me about it before. A lot of it was a lot of anger, a lot of, you know what I mean? Because once it occurred, I got taken out. I got put out the house,
Right.
given to my grandmother. So me and my mother didn't really get to talk. So having this conversation with her, I could just remember like feeling like she was trying to listen to me, and I just, I felt comfortable talking with her. However, that conversation just led to our destination, which ended up being this apartment, the back of an apartment that I had never been to. But she knocked on the door, and it was my stepfather who answered. So she was, I guess, prepping me or gauging my temperature before putting me in this I guess setup. I don't know.
Wow. How did your relationship with your mom influence your ability to trust other Black women? I saw that and I was like, I can't even be mad at you.
I would say, which I feel like deep down it affected me in certain ways.
Because do you
But
even feel
honestly,
safe with Black women? You can be honest.
honestly, I don't think I ever really asked myself that question, because I didn't really feel safe with anybody.
Right.
Um, so it really wasn't like, oh, when I get around these group of women, I feel away. However, to be a little bit more, into the story, I had Black, women around me that I thought to be ideal mothers, and I thought to be, someone I would want to be like. Hindsight, maybe not, but I would later find out even they knew about it.
Mm.
And so my distrust for Black women, um it was deep because I didn't have Black aunts that were really around. My mother kept us away from her family. She labeled herself the Black sheep. So I have 3 aunts, and I don't really have that much of a relationship with them. So she kept us really under her thumb, more so me,
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't want me to talk. So I think it would be recently whenever I decided to join this book cohort where I started to address my feelings of Black women that were unsettling to me. And being a part of that experience helped shape my idea of what Black women are. And even where I grew up, we lived in a predominantly white area.
Mm-hmm.
And so our Blackness was already
Yeah.
looked down upon. So my upbringing was very interesting, but I always sought my people because I just always had this intriguing feeling to want to be close to people who look like me, who spoke like me, and who thought like me. So yeah, but it's just a hard thing for me to explain. If I were able to pinpoint like did I would say yes.
You have homegirls? Like, are you close to any Black women, like friends?
I would say my idea of what friendship was coming up, I feel like any relationship that I've had could not really flourish or be much of anything outside of what I could allow it to be, because I could never show true authentic self based on a secret I was keeping. So with that being so much part of my identity, my experience, it's really hard to connect. So a lot of people would know a lot about me, but not, I mean, I would know a lot about other people, but they wouldn't know a lot about me. So that for me created a disconnect to where it's really hard for me to connect with women. Relationship wise with females, I don't have like, I can't wrap my head around when people like be on the phone with their friends for hours and they're just shooting the shit and they do this like every day. No, I don't have that. I don't know what that looks like. There's people I've kept close, but it's in positions where it's just like, that's my little sister type deal. Or, you know what I mean? Oh, I knew this friend from so, but we really ain't close. You know what I mean? I might be the godmother to her kid. I don't do nothing for the kid because I don't have that relationship. And I there's a disconnect for me when it comes to these interpersonal relationships to where I fully cannot connect. I'm working on it.
I would say, is this something you working on in therapy?
I'm trying to work on everything in therapy, and even with my own living experiences, like trying to be vulnerable, especially with everything coming out, right? Me being forthcoming with information, it allowed me to connect with certain people, but it also helped me disconnect from a lot of people, because in me telling my truth, certain relationships with Black women were severed, especially a woman that I consider to be a second mom to me. When I found out she knew, and that was because I came out and told her thinking I was giving this deep information, and for her to say, oh yeah, you told my daughter, like who was my best friend, and she told me.
Did she say why she didn't do anything, or like?
No, she never explained why she never did anything. And then to me, it made me look at her interactions with me from that day on to present, because now I'm looking at you funny, because I'm thinking you're treating me just like your other daughter, but I'm starting to see that you were treating me like a charity case. And I feel like you was hee and ha with your friends and your family about what you did for me based on my living situation, because it was something to talk about. So a lot of things became out in the open in this, in my scenario. And it blew me. And then my aunt didn't even know. Like, she kept it from, no one knew. So we really were on like this own like metaphysical like island.
To your own world.
Right. And then to say, I told you that well, you heard that my mother would say things like, why her, not me? That the woman that I consider to be my mother, she used her own interaction where she overheard her threaten my stepfather with calling the police for what he did to me. It's like everybody knew something was up and no one did anything. And then also these same people allow me to live this life in public. Because I don't remember telling. Because it's like, you're a child, you say something, you're supposed to get a reaction, something's supposed to change. Nothing changed, and you shut it off. I didn't remember any of it. And that's type of things that just blew me and just made it more important for me to be able to talk out about it, because it's one thing to experience it and say something happened. It's another thing to say something happened and then also hold those who failed you accountable in that.
That's a fact.
No one gets a pass with me.
Oh, I know you give it up. I know. I know you don't play no games.
I heard the way I said it. You're gonna be like, yeah, I heard it. She don't play like it.
I just had a question that just popped up. Was one of the reasons why you were a little nervous to have the conversation with me was because I was a Black woman?
You're my first interview as a Black woman with a Black woman. I've been reached out by white women. And
they colonizers love our pain, child.
No, but please believe when I talk to them, I let them know. And we don't trust the white man. I mean, I can only speak from my experience. Don't tact on your situation and what you got going on. We are not the same. none of this is going to be able to like be compared at all.
Right.
And I make that no. I make that very no. Don't attach
Mm.
yourself to this.
Well, I'm happy that was your first. Do you feel safe? You feel comfortable? I feel like you feel comfortable.
I'm good now. I'm good. It's just me talking any like at all. Even when I record, like I'm in front of the camera and like all my outtakes are just like, oh, do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm getting better. I love how comfortable I'm feeling. So this is going
And I
great.
sang happy birthday to you. Listen, I've been doing this for almost 6 years. I think you're the only person I sung happy birthday to.
Oh snap.
So you should feel special.
I do. Even if I was the 8th, the 10th, or the 100th, that feeling real
Okay,
special.
listen. Do you think you would ever forgive your mom? And I know.
No.
Well, there
Straight
you go.
no, period. And I only say this, I know the way people are raised and how they, love to live their life is, forgiveness is for you and not,
Yeah.
when you forgive someone for you, it's not for them. In my instance, it is for me that I do not forgive her. And for me, forgiveness doesn't attach negative feelings for me. Me not forgiving her is her living in her own accountability, whether she wants to accept it or not. For me, it exists, so it's yours. You carry that. I don't want you at any point in time while you're still here think that anything you ever did was okay.
Yeah.
And so she will never hear the words "I forgive you" come out of my mouth. Absolutely not.
Well, I will
No.
say this to you, because me and my mom, and I share this with my listeners, especially when there are certain
Okay.
stories that resonates with me. But like, me and my mom did not have a relationship. The person who I consider my mom was my grandmother, and she passed away. And my mom and her boyfriend used to be very abusive towards me. And, it just got to a point where once my grandmother passed away, I think a lot of things just came back to me when I was at this age, because after so long, you so used to showing face and you just, make surviving, that you just forget a lot of shit until something trigger you. And just on my journey with therapy and stuff, I had to forgive her. And I, even though my mom would never admit to what she's done to me or what she allowed happen to me, I had to do it for myself, because I had so much anger because of that lady. Like, to the point where I was in college and my life could have went completely left because I blacked out and I physically harmed someone. And I knew it was
Yeah.
because of her. So, I just want you, when you're ready, I think that's something that you should consider, because you should be able to have relationships with people, especially women who look like you, and be comfortable and feel safe, because you deserve that. You went through hell as a child, and in this adulthood, now that you have control, you deserve to be happy, and you deserve to have fun, and you deserve to have a community of people who want to be around you and want to love on you.
Right. And then with that is being able to accept it.
And being
So
able to accept the apology that you would probably never ever get from her.
oh yeah, that's not coming. That's not
Yeah,
coming at
yeah,
all.
because
And
I never got an apology.
even if it did come, I wouldn't believe it. There's too much that has occurred and has gone down. Most people like, oh, your life was enough. You know what I mean? Your childhood, but like it's the things that happened once I started to speak out that really blew me about who this individual truly is, and a monster. Like she's a monster. And that's why it's scary,
No, it
because
is.
she's anything,
It is.
anything.
How do you think the abuse you endured may have influenced your decisions and behaviors during your teenage years, including the decision to become a teenage mother?
Oh no. Um um
Because I wasn't expecting that either.
mhm. So basically, I mean, the telltale is the lack of love, the lack of acknowledgement, the lack of just love,
Yeah.
right? You get hungry. And
You try to
for
fill that
me,
that void.
right, and you're trying to see what it feels like to be loved. And for me, it it turned into me, like, I was good in school. Like, I was that, I was the honor roll child. But I got my taste of my first love, a boy that he was older, so I thought he was mature, no,
Because they all the same child.
Hello. So, I mean, I think it was that, and then me and him opening up, and then me feeling seen by someone for the first time, because I let him know about my abuse. I really wasn't a sexual teen. And I know most people think that, oh, when you're sexually abused, you're just going to be sexual. And that was not my case, because with my disease, that made me be very scared. So whenever I did come around to wanting to have sex, I was in a relationship for 2 years as a teenager. That's commitment. And yeah, he was my first and my first love, so I was able to have that moment as a teen. But my behaviors, I snuck out to see him. Could no one keep me away from him, even when my stepfather tried. The time where he found out that he was 3 years older than me, and I believe I was 14, and he was like, no, he's 17, you're 14.
He got some fucking nerve.
Oh, because even he hit me up, because we share a son. He hit me up and was like, now I see why he was acting the way he was acting, because he was coming off as jealous, and which is scary, is weird. It made me sick to my stomach, because even though this is 2 years post ever being touched by him, there was things that were occurring that were still inappropriate, and that being one of them, to where he'd be the last person I listen to if you tell me I can't do something I want to do.
Right?
Like, are you serious?
I'm gonna do even harder.
Hello, I'm gonna jump out this window, and I'm gonna take, you know what I mean? So I would sneak out, I would jump out my front window or whatever, lock my door. Again, we walked. He was in the same city. We met up, and I just did what I could do. I can say, growing up, like, a lot of people don't know this about me, because again, I had to live a certain type of life. Like, I had this certain facade. You know what I mean? So much so that I did not take pictures in my teenage years. Like, I have very limited photos. I refused to take photos because I was so afraid that someone could see the sadness that I was truly in.
I saw a picture of you. I don't know where I saw it, but I'm like, I can tell you were sad as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why me personally, now, I don't like forcing moments in photography. I like to capture the moments as they come. So that's how that shaped my view on that. But so yeah, I ended up getting pregnant at 16. And I lied to you, I lost my virginity at 16 in April, and I got pregnant in June. And it wasn't education, because again, I was getting the birth control. My mother took me to get the birth control. So she knew where I was going with it. Now, the knowledge of when, and missing it and not keeping track of it, that's where I fell off. And that's how I ended up pregnant with my oldest son. And I was the pregnant teen, in my neighborhood, and that wasn't nothing to be fawning around then.
Yeah.
So even then, I looked down upon peers disappearing. Like, it was a whole nother thing in its own. And I was a varsity cheerleader. You know what I mean? So a lot of my credit, I took a couple notches down for that, but I came back, regained it.
They had to remind these bitches.
Got back on the squad, came up for home.
Like, ain't no baby stopping nothing, bitch. I'm still that bitch, okay?
Still getting the whole kid on my head. What's up? So right. Yeah. But even that, I would, I like telling that portion of my story too, because having a child does not mean your life is over. And it doesn't. So I'm glad to be able in a position to be like, it's not the end. It's a little hard. It ain't the end of it. So yeah.
Right. Now, how did you, because you mentioned how your daughter, she used to be a trigger for you. Why is that? Or why was that?
Her existence was a trigger for me. She came 12 years after my youngest son. So I wasn't, I was no rush to have no more kids. So whenever I found myself, in a relationship and thinking it was going to be, the one.
Listen,
And
they all the one, okay?
you know, so being pregnant was one thing. Finding out I had a daughter is what really moved a lot of what I'm talking about today forward. It was acknowledging that, one, I was carrying my trauma around, and she was feeling it. And I was afraid for her. I was afraid, and I couldn't really understand it because I was away from her. I moved out. I got my own family. I'm doing my own thing. I rarely talk to these people, but it caused me to look in the mirror, and it caused me to reevaluate, well, who are you as a woman? And I know with my sons, it was like, whoever I'm with, if I ever looked at my children, they behaved like them and I was embarrassed, I don't need to be with that person.
Yeah.
Same go for me. If my daughter would have turned out the way I was, would I be proud of her? And it was a no for me. And that's what prompted me to start really digging deep and trying to understand what was going on internally with my inner self, because I knew it wasn't my head. It was so deep in my spirit that I knew it had to be my younger self, honestly, that was crying out to do something. And I did.
Yeah, and talk about your relationship with Pittsburgh Action Against Rape. Because they played a very pivotal role in this.
Absolutely. I was not aware, because again, not accustomed to asking for help. So I wouldn't have known where they were.
Oh no, you are accustomed to asking for help. You're just not accustomed to people helping you. That's what that was.
That part.
Yeah.
That part. So I had reached out to a Facebook group, and it was a Black women's group, Pittsburgh Brown Mamas. Okay.
Listen, when I come pull up on you, we going out, okay? When I'm in your city, we're gonna have some hood rat fun, okay?
Because I'm good for it. I could do some. So I got referred to PAR, and I just reached out and I let it all out. Was born already. Mind you, my daughter was born in April. Her birthday Saturday, actually, April 20th. And I know. And she was born at 7 months. So my baby was a micro preemie. So almost losing her scared me right into protective mode. Like, I just started going full throttle. So I ended up confronting my mother and my stepfather after was born. There was a lot of things that happened. There's videos on it.
Yeah.
So I was just looking for help with therapy. I needed resources to help me uncover my childhood trauma. And once I reached out to them, I used their online form, like the chat. I didn't call anybody. It was 24/7. Right. But that's where I was absolutely amazingly informed that, due to the age I was at the time of my abuse, I still had legal right to go after my stepfather for the sexual abuse he had did 20 plus years prior. So that's a pivotal point for me in my life, because I was faced with the decision to take action or not, and I didn't freeze that time, so
what are your thoughts when people in these situations and people come out, they press charges, exactly, you're already laughing, I'm going with this, and the abuse happened 20 years ago. How do you feel when people say, why are you just now saying something? Or why is this happening now? Like, why you didn't do this back in the day? Like, how do you feel when people say that?
I used to get offended. My stepfather said the same thing when the police came and started interrogating him about what he did to me. It was, why now? Why now?
Or it wasn't, I didn't do it.
Never.
She lying.
Right. But I used to get offended by it because it felt so like insensitive to the person who actually experienced the abuse. And I think it also, it diminishes the effects of the event on that person. And now what I say is, well, then why did they do it? If you got to ask me why it took me so long to say something, ask them why did they even do it?
Right. Because we would have never been here.
Ask the person that made it happen.
Right.
Don't ask me why it took me so long. So I think putting it in a place where it's giving it back to the offender. They're the person responsible. Period. So when I hear that, it infuriates me, and then also makes me look at people sideways, because again, you know the statistics, and even those are under calculated. So to me, everybody looked like an op when I started hearing those types of questions. Like, hold up, what could you done? Who are you protecting? Because that's coming from a abuser enabler mindset for me.
That part.
So that's how I look at it.
Now we're almost close. We almost finished, but I want to know, what were some of the challenges that you went through when it comes to your stepfather being incarcerated? Because I know there was one situation where they couldn't find a lot of information, because since it's been a certain time frame, a lot of the paperwork was digitized, and so that means some of your paperwork was missing.
Yeah. So that is actually, like, it's crazy how that even happened, because whenever, mind you, my statement alone gave the attorney general to say go. I didn't, all they had was my word, first of all. And it was like, get him, like, let's start. Right. So the detective they were amazing. They're awesome. I will always love them.
I'm happy you had a good success story with this, because sometimes stories like this don't go as smoothly. Yeah.
I wasn't there, but I came there with detail. I came with so many things. So what happened was, again, like you said, the digital transfer of medical records, my medical records were unable to be found. There was a sealed case on file for my stepfather around the time of my abuse. That's what I was informed of by
who?
Law enforcement. A sealed record. So somebody did something to get out of something. That's what that means.
Child, so, it's giving rat. But go ahead.
Hello. And he looked like it. So basically,
but that's probably why he thought that he could do whatever the fuck he felt like doing.
Because he would get it. Mind you, he had his own history of trauma, sexual trauma. His mom was a monster just like mine. So to know the drug use, the alcohol abuse, the burglaries, the crimes, endless crimes, especially after what he was doing to me and when his mom died, it got worse. So he was getting in and out a little too fast.
It wasn't his stepfather was sexually abusing him, right?
Yes, he was. And his mom would leave them home, all 5 of her kids home by themselves, while she went and lived her life with him, and then came back one day and was like, they thought it was, oh my God, they was in her own fecal matter. But anyway, they thought she was coming back for them, but she came back for a suitcase. So yeah, she wasn't shit. But
yo, this shit is so deep and so spiritual, because that's why he felt so connected to your mother. Because of his own mother.
They so dependent on each other to extremes. They fueled off each other. One needed the other, and it's till today, because some acknowledge, but they're still together. So there's something. But what was the question?
So no, you were saying how your medical records got digitized, but they end up losing some of it, and his stuff was sealed.
But the record with CYF had my name, an ID, and the time of the year that it happened, which validated what I was saying in a sense of there was something that occurred. And then had we went to trial, I would have just used my medical records and we would have compared the two. And that would have been his nail in the coffin if, he wanted to take it there. You know what I mean? But he didn't want to. I'll let that be that. But
so how many years did he get?
He got 5 to 7. But it's the when he gets out, is extensive. He's on the highest alert of being a sexual predator that you can be. I think he has up to 15 years of strict probation or parole, where he's monitored, drugs, all that can't be used, no internet connection, can't live around kids. Like, we made sure he was ironclad till his death if he makes it out. The thing about that 5 to 7 is it was 80% mandatory. So around 2 years, last year, he came up for parole. Yeah.
Wow.
I went to the parole board, and I spoke with them, and they were jaw dropped to the point where that opportunity with the parole board aligned me with a program with the Pennsylvania Office of Victim Advocate, the resiliency program. And now I will be speaking as a public speaker with them, just based off my experience of telling the parole board exactly what happened to me, to where they say you wouldn't need to give us any more information unless you wanted to. And he's coming up again this year, because they denied it. It was obviously they denied it. It was like, yeah, no, you're not. But he's refusing to do the sexual like predator like education in prison. Like, he's still not taking accountability behind bars. So I think he's gonna try to eat the full 7.
He's old, right?
Yeah, he's in his 50s.
Do you feel safe?
There,
like, how are you feeling about all this?
I live in the same place I lived whenever I put the charges on him. At the end of the day, I think, and this is why I honestly feel strongly that my sons let me know, like, they've never been abused by my stepfather. Thank God, because that's all I really had at that time was God. But I think, and this is my assumption, I feel like there's something in me that it gives off like, fuck around and find out. So with that being said, I can create stipulations if he gets released, when he gets released, to where he can't live a certain distance away from me and my children, because my children were my biggest concern, because he can't talk to me ever again. He's not allowed. That's like per law. But my kids are a different story. And that's a line that my mother tends to not want to well, she used to. I don't know about now. She never cross. So now I don't feel I'm good. I'm good anywhere I go. I go back to the city that I'm from, which is 10 minutes from where I live.
I know I feel like you carry something with you, baby.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like, I keep it that I keep it on me. But also, they need to be afraid of me.
Right.
I am afraid of them. I'm not no little girl. I don't got no secret. Whatever they had on me is off of me, and it's theirs. Your shame comes in your walk, not mine. So yeah, I've cheered. I've coached cheer for my neighborhood, like termite teams. Like, I'm active. So
that's good.
Get out my way. That's really what it is. I mean, if I found out you living around kids, I'm going to report it.
As you should. As you should.
I'm gonna be on your time when you get out. Like, this ain't over.
Yeah, I know. Listen, you gonna be a nigga's worst nightmare, baby. he listen, if he know what I know, he better stay his ass in that house. Because what can you do? You can't do nothing. Everybody uses the internet. So you can't work.
Phone's got the internet on them. So I mean, that was our hope with agreeing to the plea deal, is that he does fuck up. So he goes in there and he serves. I don't know how much he got to serve if he renege on it.
Yeah.
So that's our hope, to get him in at the end game.
Yeah.
But yeah, will forever be changed.
Yeah. Yeah. And last but not least, what is your advice to some of the listeners if their story is similar to yours? What would you tell them, or what would you tell your younger self?
Well, I would tell someone who can relate to anything that I've said today, you are the most important part of your story.
That's a fact.
And I say that because when we're in these type of situations, and why it becomes what it is for us, if we tell it for long, is because the wrong people around us had their own motives above us. Fact. And that can make you feel little to not important at all, when all actuality you are very important, so much important that they wanted you to be quiet, so much important that they were trying to protect themselves from you. So understand your true power. And although this was not our mess, it happened. And to me, and I can honestly say that because I'm living it, is that the best part of it is the person that you begin to build. Because I know for me, I would always hope someone would come. And today I am that for myself, and I'm that also for my children. So I became my own superhero. And I think everybody who experiences that type of loss can become that for themselves. And you really get to start from scratch.
Nah, I like that. Be your own superhero, baby, because ain't nobody gonna save you but you.
And that's not a bad thing either. It's actually the most freeing. It's so freeing because you can decide at any point to put it down.
Yeah. That's a fact. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. I think this was an amazing conversation. I wish I could see her face. She is smiling with the pearly whites, baby. I am happy. Yes, I am happy that we did this. It was so funny, y'all, because I think something was going on with my schedule and I really wanted her on the show. So I was just calling her and I was like, girl, you look crazy. And then she was like, girl, I'm at work. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
No, for real. I was like, who is this number?
I know. My number like a bill collector, y'all. So I know she was like, yo, who the fuck keeps calling me?
I don't know nobody from here. I don't know nobody.
Right. But no, seriously, thank you. I know. I have this one saying that I always tell the professional homegirls is, you have to share your storyline because you never know how it's going to be somebody else's lifeline. So thank you for coming on the show and just being so honest and transparent. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for having me. And everyone watching, I really do hope I made your life better in some way.
Yeah. And to the listeners, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or you want to say, hey, girl, hey, please make sure to email me at hello@thephdpodcast.com. And until next time, everyone, later. You're not going to say bye?
Bye.
Oh, that was so good.